Kieran, make no mistake, this is a huge political gamble that President Biden is taking today. Last night, there was no sense that a framework was even in place. Negotiations were still ongoing and things were in disarray. And yet this morning, the White House issued a statement saying a framework had been agreed, and the president rushed to Congress to give details of the compromise to all his Democrats and to hope, almost beg them to get on board. Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, even reportedly today telling her party not to embarrass the president as he heads off later to Europe. They're hoping that the bickering that we've seen now for months between the progressive liberal wing of the party and the two moderate senators, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, would finally be over and everyone would move forward together and get behind Biden's two big domestic and infrastructure bills. But the latest just now from the progressives is that they won't vote for the smaller of the two bills later today unless they see all the finer details, including on climate policy in the other bill. It seems, I have to say for now, that Biden's framework simply has not cut it. Mr. President, can the US still be seen as the climate leader? Mr. President, can the US still be seen as the climate leader? Is everybody on board with your framework, Mr. President? He didn't answer, but it's the key question. Does President Biden finally have the support of every member of his party for his two signature pieces of legislation? One including billions of dollars to fight climate change that he's desperate to secure before heading off to Europe and the UN Climate Summit, where he wants the US to be seen as leading the world.
Today, I'm pleased to announce that after months of tough and thoughtful negotiations, I know we have a historic economic framework.
He thinks, or he knows, because there had been no sense of a deal last night. Yet today, Joe Biden announced the framework of a deal, almost daring Democrats to reject it. The president met with members of his Democratic Party in a room down the end of this corridor, and he urged them to get behind both bills before he heads off to Europe. But crucially, what he couldn't tell them was whether or not Senators Manchin and Sinema, the two who've been causing all the trouble, whether they were on side. So his political gamble today may yet not pay off. As they emerged from the meeting, members of the progressive wing of the party, who've been opposing Senator Manchin in particular, didn't appear to be convinced.
It wasn't clear whether the two senators have committed to vote for it. So, look, I think it's a bit of a leap of faith in the president, and I think, look, the first step is we got to see the legislation.
We are doing in this bill what has not been done in many, many decades in protecting the needs of working families, the children, our environment, climate change. It is really quite consequential, but I think it needs to be improved on.
It needs to be improved on, he says, but it's not clear there is any more room for negotiation. At least that's how the president put it today.
I want to thank my colleagues in the Congress for their leadership. We spent hours and hours and hours over months and months working on this. No one got everything they wanted, including me. But that's what compromise is. That's consensus. And that's what I ran on.
The compromise was thrust on the president by this man, Senator Manchin from the coal state of West Virginia, who single-handedly forced the removal of the major piece of climate legislation from Biden's bill, though that wasn't how he saw it when I caught up with him last week. Senator, we're just weeks away from COP26. What do you say to those who say you're hijacking the president's climate agenda such that he turns up empty-handed to Glasgow?
Not at all. My God, he's got more than anything. And in history,
but he will turn up potentially with nothing because you're saying you disagree with the central plank of his climate legislation.
No, you're just absolutely wrong.
There is still $500 billion worth of climate spending and tax credits in Biden's new framework, but the finer details of the policy are not clear. And until they are, the progressives in his party are threatening to block a vote on the president's other, smaller infrastructure bill, which is set for later today. A crisis perhaps in the making as President Biden left for Europe. Not so much the leader he wants to be, but potentially the loser.